one spirit, one voice, the sound of one who makes a choice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of voices too. Sound of me singing with you, helping each other to make it through. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices three, singing together in harmony, surrendering to the mystery. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of all of us, singing with love and the will to trust. Leave the rest behind, it will turn to dust. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of all of us. This is the sound of one voice, one people, one voice, a song for every one of us. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice. One spirit, one voice. The sound of one who makes a choice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice.
Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way that you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, "Let me take the speck out of your eye," when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite! Take the plank first out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. By their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, a good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down first and thrown into the fire. Thus, by their fruit, you will recognize them.
Do not judge. There's a number of reasons why Jesus tells us not to judge. First of all, we rarely have all the facts. For example, a situation that seems negative at first often turns out to be something positive. I know I've observed a number of people over the years who, when going through a relationship breakup, tell me this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, only to have them tell me years later that it was the best thing that ever happened to them. We can't see the big picture. We don't have all the facts, so our judgment is usually inadequate at best. Remember the story I shared with you a little over a year ago about the wise farmer. One day his horse runs away and his neighbor comes over to him and says, "Oh, that's terrible." And the wise farmer says, "Well, maybe not, who's to say?" The next day his horse comes back with 12 feral horses. The neighbor comes over and says, "This is wonderful. Now you have 13 horses." The wise farmer says, maybe not, who's to say?" The next day his son is taming one of the wild horses and falls off and breaks his leg. The neighbor comes over, says, "I'm so sorry, this is awful." The wise farmer says, maybe not, who's to say?" Sure enough, the next day the army is passing through the area conscripting all able-bodied young men. Well, the farmer's son is spared because of his broken leg. The neighbor comes over and says, "What great luck." And of course, the wise farmer says, "Well, yet again, maybe not, who's to say?" When you're tempted to judge something or someone, it's good to remember that story. For example, I've heard many people say this COVID pandemic is terrible, it's awful. I'm sure I've said those very words myself more than once. Yet I'm learning to suspend and delay my judgment and learning from this wise farmer. Who's to say? Maybe not. Because I don't see the big picture. I don't have all the facts. Similarly, with other human beings, we are just simply so complex and multi-layered. We don't fully understand ourselves, let alone other people. Only God knows the truth and depth of who and what a person really is. And to put ourselves in the position of judge, well, that's making ourselves God. And that's never a good idea. So the first reason Jesus is telling us not to judge is simply because we are not qualified. Only God is. Now, another reason that Jesus gives us for not judging is because judgment produces only more judgment. In Luke chapter 6, Jesus says, "Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you." What we send out into the universe is typically what the universe gives back to us. If you sow judgment, you tend to reap judgment. If you sow kindness, you tend to reap kindness. The way you treat other people, well, typically that's how most people end up treating you. This is very karma-like teaching that Jesus is giving us here. What you put out into the universe is typically what you receive from the universe. But Jesus isn't just talking about you and what you receive. Jesus is saying when you judge, you increase the amount of judgment in the world. You are feeding that particular fire. Now imagine there's two fires burning on the earth. One is God's great bonfire that provides light and warmth and comfort. It brings people together like a good bonfire does. The other fire is a raging wildfire of destruction. It burns, it consumes, it devours and destroys. Jesus says, whenever you judge, you are adding fuel to the destructive fire of judgment. You are feeding that which destroys trust, community, peace, love, and connection in the world. So Jesus encourages us to instead fuel God's bonfire of love and light by practicing things like non-judgment, and forgiveness, and compassion. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Have you ever had an experience where someone has judged you? What was your reaction? 9 times out of 10, we react in one of 2 ways. The most common way we react to judgment is by judging that person back. Oh yeah, you think I'm bad? Well, you're even worse. Oh, well, I may be that, but you're a hypocrite. We tend to judge the person who has judged us. Now, the second way we respond to judgment is to internalize it. We begin to ruminate on what they've said. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am inadequate. Maybe I am a bad person. Now, either way, in both cases, we keep the judgment going, whether we internalize it or whether we shoot that judgment right back at them. In both scenarios, judgment increases and amplifies. That's why Jesus says, do not judge, because the only thing judgment produces is more judgment. So those are 2 of the reasons why Jesus says, do not judge. But let's expand our lens a little bit now. Okay, so we shouldn't judge. But what does Jesus mean by judge? Is Jesus saying I shouldn't name injustice and oppression, racism, sexism, prejudice when I see it? That doesn't sound right. So what does Jesus mean when he says do not judge? Well, first of all, in both Matthew chapter 7 and Luke chapter 6, a few verses later, after Jesus says do not judge, he tells us that we can recognize someone's character based on the kind of fruit their life produces. Now that sounds like judgment. It sounds like Jesus is saying you can judge a person's character based on what they manifest in their lives. Okay, well, it depends on how we define judgment. So for simplicity's sake, let's clarify. Let's say what Jesus tells us not to do, let's call that judgment. And what Jesus is encouraging us to do here, let's call that discernment. What's the difference between judgment and discernment? Well, judgment is about defining what a thing or situation is. Judgment names and labels and defines who and what a person is. Judgment declares this situation is bad. That person is scum. Those people are fools, or worse, those people are evil. Judgment focuses on the external. It names and defines what a person, thing, or situation is. Now, discernment is different. Discernment doesn't focus on labeling the external. Discernment focuses on finding clarity in my inner space so that I can respond appropriately. So discernment is focused on my response and my responsibility, my ability to respond appropriately. For example, if someone steals from me and I know who the person is, judgment declares that person a thief. Judgment says, based on what I've experienced and observed and learned, that person is this. That person is a good-for-nothing thief. Discernment, on the other hand, says, based on what I've learned, observed, and experienced, this is who I need to be in relation to this person until I learn more. Judgment declares who the other person is. Discernment determines who I need to be in relation to the other person until I learn more. So discernment focuses on how to see clearly in order to respond appropriately. So let's go back to the example. Someone has stolen from me and I know who it is. Do I confront them? Do I call the police? Do I need to get a lawyer? Do I just politely ask them to give back what they took from me? Do I take the time to inquire humbly with intention to truly understand why they felt the need to steal? Maybe there's more going on here than meets the eye. Do I just forgive them and let it go? Do I get a home security system so that to prevent future thefts? Do I do all of the above? Discernment is focused on finding inner clarity so that my response is appropriate and in line with spirit and truth. Back to the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus says we can discern a person's character based on the kind of fruit they produce in their lives. Well, Jesus is referring specifically here to preachers with ulterior motives. Now, Jesus isn't telling us to go around labeling people false teachers. That's not the point. The point Jesus is making here is we need discernment to know who we can trust and who not to trust with our spiritual growth, our faith development, and the well-being of our loved ones. The focus is on discerning how do I need to respond to this person. Do I need to be on guard? Do I need to establish stricter boundaries with this person? Do I need to just totally distance myself from this person? Or do I need to confront them to defend and protect the vulnerable people I see them harming? Discernment is first and foremost about finding that inner clarity so that our response is appropriate and in line with spirit and truth. To be discerning means committing myself to first and foremost assessing what I need to change within my own heart and mind so that I can respond appropriately to this situation or this person and that my response is in line with spirit and truth. It's about finding that inner clarity, then responding. Now, how we find that inner clarity is key to discernment, and we'll talk more about that next week. In the meantime, may the fire of God keep you warm, light your way, and provide opportunities for connection with others.
For everyone born, a place at the table. For everyone born, clean water and bread, a shelter, a space, a safe place for growing. For everyone born, a star overhead. And God will delight when we are creators of justice and joy. Justice and joy for women and men, a place at the table, revising the roles, deciding the share, with wisdom and grace, dividing the power for women and men, a system that's fair. And God will delight when we are creators of justice and joy and compassion and peace. Yes, God will delight when we are creators of justice and joy. For young and for old, a place at the table, a voice to be heard, a part in the song, the hands of a child in the hands that are wrinkled. For young and for old, the right to belong. And God will delight when we are creators of justice and joy and compassion and peace. Yes, God will delight when we are creators of justice and joy. For gay and for straight, a place at the table, a enjoy.